Thanks so much for visiting the Wake College and Young Adult Ministry page. We're so glad you stopped by. We hope you enjoy this message and pray that God speaks to you specifically through this teaching. If you'd like more information about who we are, follow us on our social media at Wake ABQ. Better yet, join us for a service on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. at Copper Point Church. Thanks again for tuning in. We hope you enjoy today's message from God's Word.
Well, hey, if you're brand new tonight, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Brandon. This is my wife, Delaney, over on the side. We're the pastors here at Wake. We're so glad you guys are here. And you chose a very unique night to be at Wake. I got to be honest. I am incredibly excited for what we're about to do. Because normally myself or my wife, we have a couple other people that speak. We stand on this stage, by ourselves. We open the Bible, and we like to preach a sermon to you, and that's always, great. That's fun. But tonight, you're actually about to hear from people that are, way smarter than I am, okay? Have so much more wisdom than I have, and I am just excited beyond belief for you to hear from them tonight. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you're going to be helped tonight, and you're going to be encouraged. Can anybody in here use some encouragement in their life? I always need it. And so a little bit about what we're going to do. We've done panels here at Wake before. I think we've probably done this 6 or 7 times in the past 11 years of this ministry. We've never done one like this. Typically, it's some of the pastors from, here at Copper Point Church, and we're going to answer the questions you have, or we have a relationship series coming up in the fall. Probably the last week of that, we'll do another panel all on relationships. That'll be great. But this one, never done anything like this. We have 3 incredible people up on this stage, 3 very successful people. They have shirts that have collars on. That means you have success, right? And a nice dress. That's what it means, right? And I'm way underdressed for this. I told my wife I needed to wear a polo, and she didn't let me. But anyway, so these are very successful people, and we're going to talk about that tonight, where they are in life, and as they're walking out God's calling for their life. But I got to tell you this. They are not sitting on this stage tonight. They are not about to speak into your life simply because they are successful. There's a lot of people in this world that have success, but I would not dare let them sit on this stage and tell you anyway to live your life. These are 3 people that I look up to them even beyond what they've accomplished in their life. I look up to them because of their faith in Jesus Christ. And these are people I look up to. They're pillars in mine and Delaney's life. They have had such a massive impact in our life. And I am just so excited for you to hear from them. So if you don't have something out to write with, get something out to write with, okay? This is not one of those nights where you take mental notes. It's one of those nights where you take real notes, because we got smart people sitting on this stage, and I want you to leave better tonight. And so here's who we've got. I'm going to briefly introduce them, and I'll let themselves. But right here, this is Steve McKee. This is actually Delaney's dad, okay? And my father-in-law, a man that I believe is the king of dad jokes, and a man that, quite honestly, still scares me. Okay, so, but my father-in-law, he is president. Do you go by CEO as well? It sounds good. President and CEO of McKee Wallwork and Company, the leading ad agency in the Southwest, and I'll let him brag on himself some more. This is Wendy Miner. She actually, Delaney and Wendy worked together for a while. Delaney worked for Wendy. Wendy recently, the past how many years has it been now? 3 years ago, started a dance company, Magnify Dance Company here in town. They do ballet and tap dance and all this amazing things, and just an amazing dance studio. And so she launched into that. Her husband is an amazing guy as well, Alan. He's successful. He could be sitting on this stage too, right next to you. And then we've got Bruce Stidworthy. I've known Bruce for over 20 years now, which blows my mind. Makes me feel old, probably makes you feel older. But I love Bruce. When I think of pillars of faith in my life and in Copper Point Church, Bruce Stidworthy is one of them. He's a rare man, and so I'm excited for you guys to hear from them, and I'll sit down and stop talking so we can have them talk, okay?
Yeah. So how we're going to start tonight is just, we'll go down the line. We can start with you, Dad. I actually talked about my dad last week a little bit in my sermon, so it's kind of cool to have you here and just hear from you. But we wanted each of you to just kind of go down the line and just introduce yourself. We know your name, we know your position, but just briefly tell us about where you work. Tell us about your company, your organization, and what you guys do.
My name is Steve McKee. I'm Brandon Woodward's father-in-law. That scares me too. My company is McKee Wallwork and Company. We're an integrated marketing firm, advertising agency. We do business all over the country. I'm also an author. I've written a couple books. And what else do you want to know?
I think that's
a
great.
good start.
I asked him if I could
Sure.
call him Dad backstage. He said no. So we'll start there.
He said, you can call me Daddy.
No,
That's weird.
that's weird. So weird. On every level.
See, I told dad jokes. He's the king, seriously.
He really is. Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, hello, I'm Wendy Miner. I am the owner of Magnify Dance Center. We teach dance to little ones, ages 2, all the way up to young adults. I also direct a pre-professional dance company, so you might have seen some of our shows, and we also use that as ministry as well.
Yeah, Wendy is like the epitome of a girl boss. Like, seriously, she is honestly like, you're who I want to grow up to be. She's awesome. So, girls, get ready. She's going to drop some
She
bombs
means that
on
I
you.
hear your
Awesome.
name every day in my house. So
Sure. Oh, well, every day. I mean,
Really,
maybe
every
sound
day,
a
I
little
mean it.
creepy here. Just kidding.
no,
Okay.
I mean, it's almost every
Last but not least.
Hi, I'm Bruce Stidworthy, and I'm the president and CEO of Bohannon Houston. We call ourselves Engineering, Spatial Data, and Advanced Technologies, but mostly we're civil engineers and surveyors, and consulting firm serving public and private clients around New Mexico and a little bit in Colorado and down in Las Cruces. Those are our offices.
Okay.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
I don't know what you said, but that sounded
No,
awesome.
I know. That's
And sounds important. So, you know what's so cool is I've been talking to each of them over the last couple days, and a little bit more backstage, and they're all operating in their calling. They're all, like I said, several times, they're experiencing success, and really, I think, mostly sitting, where they feel that God wants them right now in their life. But what was fascinating is I was asking them about how they got started, like getting out of college. Like, I bet you guys just hit the ground running. Like, things were just working out. That was not the story for any of them. And so I'll go back down to Bruce, and I just wanted you guys to share a little bit about what was that like getting out of college, like ready to take on the world? What did that look like? And then how has that morphed into where you are today?
Okay, do you want me to kind of like tell the whole story we were talking about? Or
Yeah,
just
let's go
answer
for
that
it.
part?
Yeah.
Okay. So actually, even before I got out of college, my last summer before I graduated, Tammy and I were getting married that summer, and I was going to school down in Las Cruces, and the 2 summers before that, I had worked up here at Sandia Labs, and I had decided I didn't want to do that. And somebody told me that I was a civil engineering major. Somebody told me that, if you really want to do civil engineering, you need to work for a consultant because that's where all the design gets done. And so, this was back in the days of phone books, which, some of you might remember and some of you might not. But anyway, I looked in the phone book, found all the civil engineering companies that were in the phone book in Las Cruces, sent cover letters and resumes to all of them, looking for a summer internship. It just so happened that our firm, Bohannon Houston, was in the Las Cruces phone book. I have no idea why. We didn't have an office there then. And so I sent off a letter and a resume. And then, like a week later, I called all of them just to follow up, make sure they got it, and see if they were interested, see if they wanted, to set up an interview. And except I didn't call Bohannon Houston because back then you had to pay for long-distance calls, and I was a college student. So I was like, well, I'm not going to call them. And turns out, to make a long story short, that's where I ended up that summer. And I had a great experience, but my whole plan was when I went back to school, I was going to go to the career fair and put resumes out there and get a whole bunch of offers and decide between them and, look outside of New Mexico and just, see what was out there. As it turned out, I was in the hospital the whole week of the career fair getting my appendix out. And right after the career fair came decision time, and so the company, Bohannon Houston, had already extended me an offer, and so I said, yep, that's where I'm going. And it's just a neat example of you think you have a plan, and then God has a plan, and His plan is better.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
cool. So you started as an intern, and now you're the CEO.
Yes, I left out a lot of the story there, but
That's really cool, you guys.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
And that's recent, Bruce. When did you officially become president?
I just took on that duty April 1st.
Okay,
I
that's
knew
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, give him another hand. That's amazing. I love it. Okay, Wendy, I wanted to ask you the same question, and you were talking about how it's kind of the same thing. It didn't go like you thought it might.
Totally. I had a unique experience because I feel like I've known my calling my whole life. Since I can remember, my mom put me in dance when I was 3, and I just loved it from the beginning. And I think when I was 9, I was already telling my parents I'm going to be a ballerina when I grow up. That's just what I've always wanted to do. I never played any other sport. I never did anything else extracurricularly. It was always dance. And so I actually didn't even go to college right after. I did go to college eventually, but after high school, I knew that I was going to go get into a dance company. And so I went out and auditioned in probably a dozen different cities. My mom took me all over the country, and I just kept getting every door slammed in my face. And it was super discouraging, and so eventually I kind of wound my way back and went to college, which I felt like was a huge failure, because I wanted to be a dancer. And I knew someday I wanted to go to college and have a real job, because I knew dance wasn't really a real job at that time. But, I never would have, at that time, seen myself where I am now. I always thought, absolutely not. I would never own a dance studio. It sounded like the most awful job ever. And exactly to your point, my plan was absolutely not God's plan, but I can look back and see so clearly every pivotal moment, where his hand just guided me to the right place, where I met the right people or had the right experiences and learned the right lessons, to bring me where I am now.
Awesome. Okay. And then, yeah. And you're going to, this is a common theme. You're going to see it. So if you're in this place, be encouraged tonight. And then, so Steve, same question to you. What was that experience like coming out of college, and then how you wound up where you are now?
It was awful. I graduated from UNM, Lobos, and had no idea what I was going to do. I totally drifted. There was a few job interviews on campus, but nothing, like the bill collectors and stuff like that. And I had no idea what I was going to do, so I did an internship for 6 weeks, and then I went to Phoenix because my sister lived there, and I hung out with her for a while, and I looked around. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had no idea what I was going to do. I was completely adrift. Came back home, just didn't know. And then I ended up taking a job at a company that I'd worked at during college, but it was kind of a safe choice. It wasn't a good fit. It wasn't a good place to be. I spent a year doing that. And so the first year plus, the first 15 months after I graduated, I was completely adrift. So if any of you feel adrift or unsure, welcome to the world. Things work out. We'll probably get to that. But I was I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so the only encouragement I would give you now is if you don't know what you want to do or what you're going to do, it's okay. It's okay. God's going to move.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask you to not hold the bottom of the mic. Sorry, I didn't tell you that, guys, ahead of time. And then, sorry, go ahead.
It just makes me happy.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, well, so we're just going to hop into some questions tonight. We have a few that we drafted, and then also we asked on social media for you guys to send in some questions, so we've got some of those as well, just to ask our panelists. So we'll start, I guess, back with you and kind of work our way back down the line. So I want to ask you, as a Christian, as a person of faith, how has your faith helped you and guided you professionally?
That's a big question. Well, first of all, the thing I tell young people when I speak to them is, that Bible thing you're holding in your lap? It's true. No, it's true. Meaning, stake your life on it, every word of it. It's true. And it's true. It's not only true in church, it's true in business. And I've always been somewhat serious of a person, and I just decided when I was young that I was going to follow the Lord and that I was going to do my best to believe. And I've often challenged myself with the question, what would my life be like if I really believed? I mean, if I really believed, what would my life be like? And I don't know if I've ever implemented that all the way, but what it has done is, I read a proverb every day, have for years, a chapter out of Proverbs, plus my other Bible study. It's uncanny. If you follow the wisdom in the Scripture, it's uncanny how you will succeed because you'll be a good employee and you'll be loyal and you'll be faithful and you'll work hard and you'll use good judgment and you won't make stupid mistakes, as many stupid mistakes as you might make. And so, the Bible, the Lord gives us eternal life and salvation through Jesus, and that's our ultimate destiny, but it's also the most practical book there is. And so any success I've had in business, I attribute 100% completely to whatever gifts and talents God has given me, but then also being as faithful as I can to the instruction he's laid out in his word.
Oh, good.
That's
I love
awesome.
that. Okay, so Wendy, I'll ask you a very similar question. So you started a company 3 years ago. You started Magnify Dance Center from the ground up, which is really cool. I know a lot of people in here are interested in being an entrepreneur and owning a small business one day. So it's cool to hear, especially because you're so new into the process, and having such great success. So how has your faith played into the startup process and also in your professional life?
Well, I love what we're talking about tonight because my husband and I, we're all about purpose. That's what we try to drill into our kids every day is find God's purpose for your life. Find God's purpose for your life and your work won't feel like work. And I just think that's so important. And I feel like I have a very different story maybe than many of you because, as I already said, I feel like I've known my purpose for a long time. And, maybe some of you don't, but don't yet. But as Steve said, you just keep following and God will reveal it. But specifically with my business, I think before I decided to go ahead and take the leap and open a business, I had a lot of doubt of whether or not it was even worthy. And so I kind of wanted to speak to you a little bit about that tonight because it's this is a dance studio, we're not saving lives and what difference can that really make? But there was nothing else I really wanted to do. And I kind of got to this crossroads where it was either go all in and follow your passion. I felt like I was really in line with what God was wanting me to do at that time or not, and that felt even scarier. And so it's neat for me to see the ways that God has blessed my path, the challenges that he has helped me overcome, the ways he has grown me, and things I never before thought I would be able to do. After starting a business, some of those things seem really, really simple now because starting a business is actually quite difficult. But I would just say don't put judgment on what you feel your calling is. There's a million ways to start a business today, which is really, really cool. And my path looks very, very dissimilar from theirs. But don't place that judgment on yourself. And, when you're in tune with God, you're in his word every day, you'll know where he's nudging you.
Yeah, I love what you just said about how following God's purpose and plan for your life was scary, but not following it was even scarier. That's a really cool way to look at it because God will call you to things that are so much bigger than you feel like you can handle. But, how much more scary is it to go it alone and try to go it without God and just do your own thing? And so it's scary, but it's also a great comfort to know that he's guiding it and he's leading it. And, obviously, he's been with you every step of the way, and you've just seen incredible growth with what you've started. So that's really cool.
Yeah, awesome. And I'm willing to bet that you've learned, as you've stepped out in faith, I'm sure time and time again you feel unqualified, and you're like, how do I do this? And we're just even watching from the outside, and I feel like God has just caught you guys every single time you've taken that step. And I know that's your story, Bruce. I know that's your story, and I think it's going to be yours as well. And so if you're going to take that step of faith, you may as well take it in line with God, right? I don't want to take a blind step thinking I hope something catches me. I want to know that I'm walking with God as I do that. And that's what I see in all of your lives. Bruce, changing gears just a little bit, I wanted to ask you, so you're, the president and CEO of a big company. You guys do a lot of things. You got a lot of, you're a busy man, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. But here's what's crazy. Can I just tell you guys a little bit about the Stidworthy family? This is one of those families, like I said, as Bruce as a pillar, his family really is a pillar of Copper Point Church. I mean that. I'm not blowing smoke at all. Bruce, being the president of this company, Bruce is the director of our missions department here at Copper Point Church. And so we're doing trips down to Mexico multiple times a year. We're going to Africa pretty much every year. He is not the main, he is the sole source of communication with our missionaries that are on the ground, with getting these trips organized and planned. He spends vacation time to go on these trips. His wife runs our entire fine arts program here at Copper Point, and if you've ever seen it or have any involvement, it's with our middle school and high school. It is a massive undertaking. She runs that, volunteer. What he does here is volunteer. Every weekend you're here. Like, there are not weekends the Sidworthies are not at church, and they're here multiple services. If there's a prayer night, they're here. If there's a worship night, they're here. Their kids go to student ministry. Like, it's just, they're one of these families that's not just plugged in church and, like, comes and is involved and committed. Like, they are, like, does that blow anybody else's mind that a president of a company would be the missions director of a church, volunteer? And so what I wanted to brag on you, because I know you wouldn't do that about yourself. I know that. And so I wanted to do that because I have a microphone in my hand and I can. So I just want to know, though, like, how do you do that? You know, I think a lot of people, I got to be honest, I think especially in this age group, we think we don't have time for church on the weekend, or we don't have time to come to Wake because we got like a test coming up in a few days, or we got a paper that's coming. And when I compare that to what you're doing, I'm like, okay, I feel like I don't have an excuse anymore. And so how have you guys as a family managed to do that and make that kind of decision?
You made that sound so crazy. I don't know what to say now, but
It's crazy though.
you know, I think it's not as complicated as it sounds, really. I think, and this is not a biblical thing, you know, to say. It's just something I believe, is that whatever you think is important, you'll find time to do. And so when you step back and you think and you ask God, what do you want me to be doing? How should I be spending my time? He'll lead you, and then you find the time to do the things that you really want to do and the things that you believe He's calling you to do. I guess that's my answer.
Simple answer. Has I don't know. I look at your family, and I really feel like God has just had favor on you guys and blessed you guys. And I don't look at you guys as a family that's falling apart because you're doing too much. And so I think, I think you would agree with that. As you guys have stepped out and you've created time for what you believe in, I feel like God has come in and blessed you guys tremendously. And you guys are such a massive blessing to this church. And so I want to say thank you to you guys for everything you do. Absolutely.
Well, let me just say that, sort of like what Steve said about life in general, we've strived to do what God wants us to do and to honor Him, to understand from His Word, the principles and to follow those. And we believe with all our hearts that God has blessed us in many, many ways, far beyond anything that's about us, but it's just about His faithfulness and His goodness and the depth of His love for us. And I think, Steve also talked about purpose in his first answer, and I loved what he said, but I would just add to that I think sometimes, and I remember this, at your stage in life, you're maybe a little bit obsessed about where am I supposed to be and what's the big picture for me, and I think sometimes we tend to get caught up too much in worrying about that big picture, and the advice that I give people is, if you just seek God and make the little decisions right, the day-to-day things like Steve was talking about, being in the Word every day, and just making those little decisions right day by day, then He's going to lead you in the big stuff.
So true.
So good. I love that. Okay, Bruce, I've got another question for you, and then we'll continue down the line. So this is a big one, I think. I've heard this a lot from conversations that I've had with people in this room, and just my personal experience when I worked, in at the city. As a Christian, I'm sure that there were times when you felt like you stood out in the secular workplace environment. Your values, the things that you stand for, don't necessarily align with the people around you and what they stand for. How have you managed to stand by your values and your beliefs in the middle of a secular work environment, and while doing so, continue to succeed and advance in your organization?
Let me say, actually, first of all, the place that I work, Bohannon Houston, from the beginning has been an incredible match for me, and I give God the credit for that. And honestly, my work environment is a great work environment, and it really has been the whole time. We've had off and on, mostly on, over all those years. We have a weekly Bible study different people have led it over the years. And so it's really an amazing environment. And like I said, I give God the credit for leading me into that. Let me just back up a notch, though, in terms of life experience to my college years. And I came to Christ right before I started college. And there was a time there where I was very much adrift spiritually. And I struggled. And it was a lot what you're talking about, like being in an environment that was a challenge. And I would say that, my advice there is get faithful in the basic things, like finding a Bible study and participating in it. And as you do that, sort of latching on to somebody that you see as stronger and more mature in their walk with Christ than you are, and asking them questions and picking their brains. And again, just being faithful in attending that Bible study, faithful in getting into church and into Wake. And as you do that, you connect with other people who are positive influences and who are helping you to grow in your walk. And really, at the end of the day, I think that's what helped me to get solid and to really begin making good decisions.
That's awesome. It's all in the community, who you're around for sure. And that's why we love this group that we have where we can encourage each other and hold one another accountable. So that's really cool. Wendy, so you're a wife and you're a mom of 3 really cute little kids. And you're also a business owner. So you wear many hats. And I think for a lot of the girls in here, we struggle with the idea of how do we do it all? How do we make it all work and do it well? And I look at you, and like I said earlier, I think you're a great model of, learning to do it all well and, living that out in your lifestyle. So would you just share a little bit of insight on how you manage to balance all of your many roles?
So I love this question because I kind of don't like that whole concept of balance. I heard a pastor speak once about balance, and he spoke specifically about Jesus, his ministry on earth and how he was so unbalanced at that time. I mean, he was so in his Father's will. Whether he was weary or tired or, facing great opposition, he was like all in, right? And that just kind of resonated with myself, my husband. He owns multiple businesses. I mean, our life is very full. And sometimes I feel like, especially as a woman, that whole concept of being balanced makes you almost feel guilty, like if I'm doing this, then I'm not doing that well, and vice versa. And so what I subscribe to a little bit more is just that there are seasons of life. And like right now, I have a relatively new business, and I'm like nose to the grindstone trying to grow it and trying to make it successful. And that's a season of my life, and I can step back and recognize that it's not always going to be that way, God willing. And but we do have young kids, and so I think what we have to be careful about, or what we're certain to do, is just to be very intentional with our time. And because that whole busyness thing is very much a trap as well. And so right now, I love that my kids, like, I drag them to work and they kind of hate it, but like, I love that they're getting to see me pursue my dream and getting to see me in this unique place that God has for me right now. And I just think, like, that's pretty cool. That's what I want for them. Like, I want them to love what they do when they grow up someday. And so, the days aren't always easy, but big picture, it's worth it. And I know there will be seasons where the business is flourishing and I can take a step back and, do other things with my time at that time. But, just being intentional about your time. We are intentional about spending time with our kids. I'm intentional about when do I schedule work things and when do I not. But I just try not to feel that I have to be in balance.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
For sure. And I love that you do take your kids along for the journey. And I know that not every job is necessarily conducive to that, but it is cool to see how your children are able to come to the studio all the time and they see their mom, leading this organization that she started. And what an amazing example to your young girls to see their mom chasing after her dreams and living fully in God's calling and not shrinking back from that. So I think that's really cool and really powerful for us girls to hear, and hopefully that encourages you as well.
Yeah, and I think it was my brother that said this a lot to me, that life is not really ever about balance, finding your balance. It's about finding a rhythm. Find that rhythm that works for you. And if you know anything about rhythm, it's multiple different types of beats that create a rhythm. And so you can have a lot of different things going on. You can put a little bit more emphasis on some areas of your life, but find that rhythm. Everybody's got it, and you'll feel it when you're in sync, because it's gonna be feeling right. You're gonna look at your life, your friends, your family, and everything's, not perfect, but it's looking right. You'll know that you're in rhythm. Nobody achieves balance. So, okay, Steve, Mr. McKee. No, I'm kidding. Dad. Okay, so you have enjoyed, great success in your career, and I'll brag on you for a sec that, his McKee Wallworking Company, they got voted by other ad agencies the #1 agency in the entire Southwest. They were also voted in the top 5 in the entire country. And then they did an ad campaign, was it last year or a couple years ago, that campaign got voted the best campaign throughout the entire country. Over 13,000 ad agencies were involved in that, and they won that. And so, pretty incredible. So obviously, a successful company, an ad agency. And here's what I love, though. You have been able to stand by your beliefs through this entire process. And I know that in the industry you're in, that's not easy, and it's actually not common. And beyond that, you've built your entire company, not off of the best leadership principles and all of these books you can read. You've built your company on leadership principles of Jesus, and that come from the Bible. And so I just want to know from you, how have you managed to stick by what you believe in, and how have you kind of built your company on that, and you're not working with all believers. So how is that working? It's an interesting dynamic.
It is an interesting dynamic, and it's an interesting industry. It's probably second to Hollywood in its debauchery of the advertising industry. I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff out there, and it tends to attract really creative people who tend to be, not coming to church every week. So it's been difficult, but I decided a long time ago, and this probably isn't biblical either. I don't know if I should say this, but I'll tell you because it's true, it was in my heart. When I first got into the business, I was challenged with all those things, especially when I'm on the low end of the totem pole. People are telling you what to do, and you have to make decisions. And I said to myself, if I can't be a Christian in advertising, then I don't want to be a Christian. And that was a pretty heavy statement, because I thought, was it Abraham Kuyper who said there's not one part of this earth that Jesus Christ doesn't stand over and say it's mine? And so we have abandoned the media, Hollywood, television, advertising, journalism. Generally speaking, Christians have abandoned those fields because of these things, and we have what we have as a result. So as long as God called me to it, I decided to try and be as faithful as I could. And let me tell you, there's some sweaty palm decisions that we've had to make. I could curl your hair with some of the decisions I've had to make. At the risk of my job, at the risk of other people's jobs, at the risk of my company and its livelihood. But it all is really how you define success. And as Wendy said, I love the word intentionality. I just define success differently. I want to, when I'm 90 years old, I want to be in the rocking chair next to my wrinkly old wife with my kids, my grandkids, my son-in-law, and my great-grandkids all around me, right? That's success for me. And so what does that mean? That you got to be really intentional about that. So as it relates to work, it's all about making those choices. I believe that God has blessed us with the honors that we've achieved because of our attempt to be faithful. Having said that, the conversations we have at work now, a couple of my key guys are believers, and we have these conversations. We say, what would God do if we were really committed to him and his kingdom? If we really staked it all on him, sort of like being really daring. I don't know that we've tested him in a good way yet, really. And it's kind of a scary thing, even at this point in my career. So it's a decision. I would rather be fired and have a clear conscience than, the top of my game and having made compromises. And not that we're all, I'm perfect or any of us are perfect, but you got to make those choices.
So good. I love that. And that
reminds me. That's
awesome. It reminds me a lot of the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, with these 3 young men that were also faced with, sweaty palm decisions that would have cost them their life, but they chose to remain faithful rather than compromise. And oftentimes we think like, well, those stories don't apply because there's no one threatening to throw me in a furnace if I don't bow down to a golden idol. But when you think about it, in these kind of situations, they do apply. Are you willing to stand for what you believe in? Are you willing to hold tight to your convictions, even if it costs you a promotion, even if it costs you a client, even if it costs you an opportunity? What's the most important thing? Like Bruce said, you're going to prioritize it. You're going to make time for it. And honestly, I hope that seeing and hearing from these three people will encourage you that you can hold tight to your convictions and you can decide not to compromise, and God can still elevate you and use you in a mighty way. And so you don't have to feel like you need to conform to what, the standards that are set professionally by the world, because, that's not the only path. It's not the only path to success, and that's why we really wanted to highlight you guys and, how God's used you and elevated you guys in your careers.
Yeah, and one more thing I'm going to add, then I'm going to ask you another question. If you're in an environment, or you're headed toward one, like maybe you're going into advertising, maybe you're headed toward a career field that like, I'm not just going to be surrounded by a bunch of Christians all the time. I want to encourage you, read in Genesis the story of Joseph, and then I want you to read the first 6 chapters of the book of Daniel, and I want you to watch the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and Daniel. And you have to keep this context as you read it. These guys are teenagers when we're reading about them in the beginning, and watch how they stand for God no matter what in the midst of a pagan culture, a pagan land, and God just continues to honor them and elevate. These guys work their way up to being like presidents and CEOs in the middle of Babylon, and all they ever did was honor God. And I think that can be true of your life as well, where you don't even have to climb a ladder. It's like God just puts you on an elevator and pushes the button, and he sends you up. And so, I want to encourage you, read about Joseph, read about Daniel, and you'll look at these guys like, okay, I can do that. I can live my life like that. And I see all 3 of you guys doing that. And then I'm going to ask you another question real quick. And so this one is just kind of a free one. What would be the biggest piece of advice that you would want to give to some college students and young adults in here tonight, getting ready to adult and launch into their careers?
Well, I'll cheat a little bit. Half of it is what we've been talking about is just, why are you here? Dare to trust God. Your faces are beautiful. You young people, it's just beautiful to see you. Dare to trust God. You got your whole life ahead of you. And I think the biggest piece of advice I would give you is, and this is based on partly my experience, just start. Just take a step. Bruce said it too. Just take a step. Take a job. Take a step. You're not making a decision for the rest of your life. Get in there. Work your tail off. Do all the things you need to do. Just start. Because when a moving object is easier to redirect than one that's just sitting there. So don't wait for the perfect. Start. Just start. Do something, and God will redirect you.
Awesome. Thank you. That's so good.
Love that. I'll ask you a similar question, but really directed more towards the young women in here. As a female in a professional industry, as a female entrepreneur, what piece of advice would you give to young women in here who are either getting ready to start their careers or who are very early on the ground floor of their careers?
I think the first step that we've already been discussing is, identify what your purpose is. And you might not know all the ins and outs, like I'm kind of doing what I thought I would always do, but it's actually quite different. So, what makes your heart excited? What can you do for hours at a time and look up and the time has passed and you're like, oh, what do you love to do? And as I said already, there are so many opportunities now to just go out and create your own path, which is pretty cool. So first of all is just identify that, what sets you on fire. Secondly, which I think is probably the biggest thing, is get a mentor. I'm in an accountability group with a bunch of other girl bosses, and they hold my feet to the fire and encourage me on my path. But before that, find somebody who's doing what you want to do. They've already done it. You don't have to recreate the wheel. Or maybe it's not the exact path you want, but they're in that industry. Find somebody. Just ask. Usually they'll say yes. Hey, can I take you to lunch? Can I take you to coffee? Can I just pick your brain? My husband and I have done that a lot, not only in our own industries, but also relationship-wise and as parents. You know, there's couples that we've looked up to and admired, and it's just, can we take you guys to dinner? We're having these challenges with our kids. Like, can you pour into us a little bit? People love to do that, and I think a lot of times maybe we feel like we're not worthy, or maybe we just think they're going to say no, and I think the opposite is true. Like, I would love to do that and bring somebody else on and make their path a little bit easier. So find somebody who can mentor you in that role. Very practically, don't surround yourself with a bunch of other yous. Like, God has made each of us so unique, and this is more like creating a business, but you got to diversify. You got to find people that stand strong in the areas where you're weak, and you've got to find people that shine in the areas that you don't, and then you got to lift them up, and you can't ever make it about yourself. And so that has been a big key for me as well. And then I think just I don't know. I think those are my big three.
That's awesome. I love the mentorship component as well. You know, the Bible talks all about iron sharpening iron, how
Absolutely.
we make one another better. And we're not intended to do this life by ourselves, and that includes our professional life. None of it should be where we're trying to go at it our own, because the truth is you're going to fall, you're going to stumble, you're going to need someone to grab your hand and pull you back up. And that's why it's so important to have those people that you look to and admire, but also can pour into you and challenge you. And then I would take that even a step further, and you know, once you've been on the receiving end of that, can you pay it forward? Yeah. You know, when you've advanced in your career, when you've progressed, are you willing to look back and reach your hand out to someone else and help them up the ladder a little bit? So I think that's a really cool and important thing for us to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bruce, I'm going to ask you the same question. If you just had something you wanted to share to the young adults in here about to head out into their career, what would you want to say?
I kind of said it a little bit before, but I'll come back to it again, which is to take care of the little things day by day. And as you do that, God's going to lead you step by step. And you may not understand 100% where you're going, especially if you're not like Wendy and really having this understanding of your purpose from the age of 9. But as you follow God in the little things, He's gonna help you make the right decisions on the big things. And to bounce off what Steve said as well, get going, and then continue to seek Him. And somewhere along the lines, you may see that there's an opportunity to change courses a little bit, and you'll say, God, is that what you want me to do? And you'll talk to a mentor. You'll visit with one of the people in your Bible study or whatever. You'll get a little advice. You'll pray. And you'll see, is that what God wanted me to do, or should I stay the course? Should I stay where I am? And so there's lots of opportunities down the road, and don't get too uptight about that big picture and about the end game. Be faithful in the little things, and God will lift you up.
Awesome. I love
so
that
good.
too.
Faithful in the little things. Tweet that. Okay, so we have a couple of questions submitted by social media, and we'll get through these pretty quick because we are about out of time tonight. But so I'll kind of throw this out there, and any of you guys can chime in if you've got an answer to this. So, with each of you, in the roles that you are all in, you all have a lot of daily responsibilities in your job. How and when do you find time for personal growth? How are you inspired? How do you remain motivated? How do you continue moving forward personally? And what does that look like in your life?
I can pass this along too.
I think it's what they've already said. It's being intentional. For me, it's every morning. That's how I start my day. And if I don't, then it doesn't happen, which is kind of sad. But the day just, it gets away from you. So I start with Bible study every day and journaling and affirmations, and it's just what I do. And there's been periods in my life where I wasn't good at that, or especially when I had young kids. And it's easy to make excuses. We're all busy. But you just got to do it.
There's a theme here. I just want to add to that. I've done some counseling, new believers, and I tell them, and this is the theme, if you spend time every day in the morning in the Word, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, if you spend time in the Word every morning, there's nothing else you need to do. Nothing else. Because God will change your heart. He'll change your character. He'll guide your steps. That's the only thing in life you need to do is spend daily time in the Word. Everything else will work out.
That's good. That's real. What's funny though is, and it almost like, sometimes as a pastor, you almost get like, you want to like, you get frustrated. So you say something like that, and it's like, oh, I'll write that down. Like, that is so real. And what he said earlier too, like, do you believe the Bible? Like, live like the Bible is true and watch what God does in your life. And get in the Word every day. Watch what God does in your life, and it's so true. I promise you, like, John Maxwell is an incredible man, and he's an amazing believer, and he uses principles. The Bible's still better. Like, any leadership book you can read, they're amazing, but just read about Jesus, and I promise you it's going to be better every single time. And, okay, one more question for you guys, and I love this one. This was one of my favorite questions that came in. Do you guys actively seek out opportunities to witness and evangelize to people? Like, are you like going to people that you've hired and like, let me tell you about Jesus? Or are you waiting for opportunities? Can you even take those opportunities? Or would you be fired if you tried to share Jesus with somebody? What does that look like? And I think that's an unbelievable question. So take it away, somebody.
I go into the bathroom and say, Lord, what do I do with this situation every day? Yes, but we live in a post-Christian culture, which means that people think they've heard. They haven't, but they think they've heard. And so if you just go at them through the front door, sometimes they'll just shut you down and you lose your credibility. I know you know what I'm talking about. But always looking for opportunities, and I'll give you a little tip, something that I've discovered. There's often an opportunity to tell someone that you'll pray for them, whether their dog died or they're feeling sick or whatever. If you take that little step of faith, it's a little scary, and you just say, I'm going to pray for you. You look them in the eye and say, I'm going to pray for you. I've never had a single person say to me, please don't. They look and they say, would you? And you got to be faithful to do it. You got to be faithful to do it. But think about that. Now they know where you stand, and they're watching you, and you're ministering to them.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome.
I love that, and just to add to that, I can think of 2 examples of just really poignant times that really touched my life, where people that I didn't know that well that told me they would pray for me, and then like a week, a month later, like I just get a random text like, hey, I was just praying for you, and it's like, you really did. I think so many times we can be so flippant about that and just like, I'll pray for you, but do you really? And that's been a great reminder for me to follow that example that really touched me. Nobody can fire me for because I get to be the boss, so that's kind of cool. But I certainly have a number of employees who aren't believers. We have a lot of students at our studio who don't yet know the Lord, but I feel like He's positioned us so gracefully to be a light to them, and that's why probably the biggest thing that I love about what I get to do, I get to pour into young people all the time and lead by example, and I have unique opportunities where youth will come to me and need help, and those are really cool times where I can hopefully lead them to the Lord. But my situation is a little bit unique. I'm not in the corporate world. So.
Yeah, and what I think is really cool about what you get to do is she puts on 2 beautiful, she said, pre-professional productions every single year at Christmas and Easter, and they're like at their core, like unashamedly, all about the gospel, all about Jesus, all about what He's done for us. And it's so cool because she's putting on these beautiful productions with incredible choreography and costumes and just an incredible production. And a lot of these girls, a lot of the rehearsal directors even, sometimes don't know the Lord, but what they are experiencing is the message of the gospel every single week in rehearsals. Everyone who comes to view the shows is touched. And so even in kind of a almost like, you're not out there vocally telling people about Jesus, but by what you do and what you're producing, people are experiencing that. And so for creatives in the room, I know we have a lot of creatives in here as well. That's something to consider. What am I putting out there? What am I, generating out of my heart and out of the abundance of my heart that's going to ultimately paint a bigger picture about Jesus? I think sometimes we don't think about that component of it, but what we're producing can also glorify and honor God if we choose to allow to be used by Him. So I think that's really, really cool that you get to have that opportunity.
Absolutely.
So I would say to the question, specifically the way it was written was, Whether I actively seek out opportunities to minister and witness in the workplace or wait for opportunities from the Lord. I guess between those two choices, I would say more the latter, looking for opportunities or waiting for opportunities. But I think the bigger part of the question for me is, and the bigger part of witnessing to me is by lifestyle, by decisions that you make. There's this saying, I have no idea who said it, I can't quote it like Steve did a minute ago, but somebody said, witness all the time, sometimes with words. And that's kind of, I guess, my mantra.
I love that. Just how you live your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I'm going to pray, and we're going to wrap things up tonight, and then we got some things that we want to tell you guys. And so would you guys pray with me real quick? Heavenly Father, God, I'm so grateful, Lord, for just what you're doing in this place tonight. God, thank you for the lives of these three people on the stage tonight that have been so gracious to step aside from their busy life, their busy schedules, to come and share, to pour their hearts out to us. God, we're not here tonight to present speakers. God, we're here to present lives. And I just pray that that wisdom would be transferred to every single person that's sitting in here. And like they've all said tonight, God, do we really believe your word? Are we people who will follow you every step of the way, God? We aren't going to know the big picture. God, we're not going to know 20 steps down the road, but Lord, just give us the faith through your Spirit to take that next step, to just continue moving forward, to take one step at a time. And God, we just ask that you, by your Spirit, would motivate us, would encourage us, would guide us, and lead us in the right direction. God, as we lean not on our own understanding, but on yours. God, your word says that you will make our path straight, that you will level and get rid of any obstacles that are in our way, and you will give us a straight path to walk on. And so, God, we love you. Thank you for what you're doing in this place. I pray that we would be encouraged, that we leave here better tonight, better ready to face the coming years of our life. We love you. We pray this in Jesus' name. And everybody said together.